behind me. I always have a mess behind me, but also I'm trying to get things ready for when I leave. So it's like that mess before you can get things like even semi-cleaned. It is like 7 o'clock at night, so it's wine instead of the typical coffee. Although sometimes if I was filming later videos, I was using decaf, but not for this one. Because this one is a get ready with me, more or less how I would do it if I was in the Nutcracker sesh when I had been in the Nutcracker. Because as you can see, I have the Nutcracker sweatshirt, everything. I did Nutcracker for actually 14 years back in California. And fun fact, the studio that I grew up at and the one that I was in their company, Ballet Repertory Theater, is the one that Catherine Morgan, yes, the Catherine Morgan from here on YouTube, her and her now husband are the current artistic directors and owners of the studio, although they did end up changing the name. I have not met Catherine Morgan. I have taken classes with her husband. He would teach summer intensive every year for the studio because this is the studio that he grew up at. It was his parents. But yeah, so Catherine Morgan's in-laws were my dance teachers all growing up. Her sister-in-law was actually the first demonstrator I had in my first combo class of ballet and tap. So that's a kind of a fun little thing. That's just yeah, it's crazy when all that stuff happened. But yeah, so I have been doing Nutcracker for many years. I was never amazing. I didn't do a lot of partnering. I mean, I was also comparatively a kind of chunkier girl, so they didn't really want me partnering. I have a love-hate relationship with Nutcracker, as probably many women who grew up dancing did. So I was never anything super important. The biggest role I probably had was Spanish. I did that my last 2 years, my junior and senior year. I did Spanish for the first time only 2 shows, the second time I did 3 shows. I also was lead candy cane because the thing at this studio is we do both Russian and candy cane. And for candy cane, we use the overture instead. I was surprised I didn't get candy cane earlier, not because I was like, oh, it's amazing, but one of the things with candy cane, specifically lead candy cane, is there's typically a balance that has to be done. It's either a balance or a turn that's pure, it's like a double, Alice-a-cone double, pirouette, Alice-a-cone double. It's one of those two. Or you do typically a long balance in arabesque. And I was a balancer. I actually, my freshman year of high school, ended up holding a releve arabesque for a minute and got myself on the record board. And if it's still there, if they still do the record board, it's probably still there. I'm probably still the person that owns that record. Because nobody really wanted to try and do it. I wanted to see if I could get myself onto the record board, so that one seemed the most plausible because I could balance. Or I could before I had a really bad couple of ear infection sort of thing, so lost a lot of my inner balance by that point. But like I mentioned, I have been in ballet since I was 4 years old in the combo class. When you're in that combo class, you actually get to do Baby Mouse. So you're in fight scene, there's no typical dancing, it's just kind of skipping. It's really cute. We're all adorable. We got little bows on the top and on the tail. Do I have photos? No, but just take my word for it. It is really cute. Everybody loves it. At the end, when the Mouse King dies, they go across going and crying, and one at the end goes just like that. It's great. So I did that. Then I was an angel, which is the opening of first act. There's only one little bit of dancing in that one. Most of it's running. But I have the funny story of the first year I was an angel. the angel rehearsal is on Friday nights at, I think 6:30 is when it is, because I'd have a different class that would end at 6:30, and it would be a pain because it was all the little angel parents there. But we were coming back from a trip over Thanksgiving. It was Black Friday, and I come rushing in for the last run through because we made it. I was in jeans, my sweatshirt for that year, and we had my ballet slippers on, and I was able to run the last one. Then did Soldier, which actually you only do Soldier for a year typically. That one is in fight scene. You have like the wooden guns, and yeah, it's not much to say. The big thing with that one was that was the first time I ever did a pirouette on stage, I believe. I almost actually got to be a soldier a year earlier. Usually you do 2 years of angel and then a year soldier, but by some reason, actually it's because I was already in some of the more advanced classes, I had been brought up to try to do the soldier, and it was just the only reason I wasn't is because I was 7 and not 8, and they usually like to have the 8-year-olds doing soldier. And they probably also thought in some ways they're like, this kid can't fully do her pirouette yet at the time. Like I couldn't at the time. I got really good the next year but I couldn't fully do it that time around, and they were probably like, okay, we've got enough time on this kid, it's fine. So it was that. I then ended up in party scene as a party girl for both 4th and 5th grade. That one I always loved because I had a really beautiful blue dress. It was a satin blue dress. It was cut on the bias, which made it really hard, and also it was kind of long for me. So my mom always had to hem it each year, depending. But that was most of the time fun. I had to just stand there and watch. We were watching NCIS because that was at the height, especially the first time around. It was a big thing with NCIS. I also, with being in the party scene, had to put curlers in my hair, which the comment was from my dance teacher, Miss Terry, that to all the mothers really, while you're curling the hair, just put on something, have the kids sit in a high chair and curl and pour yourself a large glass of wine, which is also why I have this here, because I'm thinking of Miss Terry. So yeah, 4th and 5th grade party girl. My only complaint was that with being in the blue dress, in our Nutcracker, the best friend of Clara is also in the blue dress. And so the blue mom usually had to pay more attention to her. But with how my dress was made, the ribbon kept on coming undone. And the girl that would usually be my mother, because usually it was a company girl, so she'd only be 17, 18 maybe, wouldn't be paying attention. So it'd have to be one of the actual moms who was on stage coming up behind me and fixing it. It was annoying. I do though remember my second year as a party girl, I got to do some special stuff. So one of the things is Fritz, Clara's brother, yanks on one of the girls' skirts, and she leads the jokes, and she sticks out her tongue and leads the jokes before the clock. I got to do that my second year as a party girl. That was fun, as well as I got to do the kind of partnering really, although wasn't much, and also I was much taller than the boy that I was partnering with, because all it was holding his hand while we were doing the ending waltz. That though was a fun memory, honestly. It was not fun though doing all of the curlers, at least at the time. I'm just trying to pack on this blue. I may also add some shimmer to it. I just always remember it was a lot of blue on the lid. Brown in the crease, blue on the lid, and just packing it on. I was not good at makeup at the time though, I will mention. I mean, I'm not great now, but you get what I mean. The next year, I will say after that point, you kind of get to more of the you could do more specialty stuff. You could possibly get some roles like best friend or lead angel afterwards, but I never got that. I was never Clara, for example, either. I did Ponchinella instead, which again had curlers, and those were even worse because it was ringlet. It was like pigtail curlers. Couldn't sleep. You could not sleep on that stuff. And then it was entertainer, which the big thing with the entertainer was the fact that you ended up having full red tights and red shoes. And at the time, because I was in 7th grade when I did entertainer, we had just moved to a different studio, like different studio space, not different studio, but different space. And the person that was the owner at the time, not Chris Eller's parents, but there was a previous guy. He was so worried about the dye and the Marley, so nobody got to practice, which for like 13-year-olds who still kind of are like not always super solid on point, that's a whatever moment. But for the person that was the lead entertainer, who was usually a freshman, sophomore in high school, who had more experience on point and was doing some crazier stuff, like there was a lot of toe hops, some pointes, they should really have been able to practice on their point shoes more, because anybody who has been on point can attest, like, you need to practice. And especially at that age, when you're that range for being on point, you need a little bit more time to get accustomed to whatever you're doing. So that was a problem with all of it. I did entertainer, and I was sad about it because didn't get to do lead angel, didn't get to do Clara, none of that. But then I got into company as an 8th grader. I was 13 when I joined company. So company is like it sounds. We do most of the parts in Nutcracker, and we run it a bit like an actual professional company with different levels and everything, and having specific rehearsals on Saturdays. However, it's not as strict. We also don't get paid. But that was a big thing. Just trying to pack on more and more. This is a lot. In company, you start off as an apprentice. And with that, there's only a couple of roles you typically do. You may get doll, you may not. Your first year, sometimes you get it second year. I never got doll. I always kind of got looked over for things, which it hurts, but I like to think it built up resilience, and I'm doing pretty well. I learned discipline while in company, and I was a darn good core member, so I could count music. But the first was doing Chinese, which you had an alternate for. So 2 people usually was equal amounts of time. And then, and I will say the Chinese is not really appropriate. You do snow, snowflake, and that is almost entirely company. The thing with that is the first year, usually you were in the little back section, and they had when I did it, it was funky choreography. They changed it 2 years later because people couldn't figure it out. I'm not bitter. That had happened a couple of times with certain choreography, which I'll mention more later. But in snow, again, you either did 7 or 8 times. I think both for Chinese and snow, I leaned more into doing 8 times for both. Maybe even more. I think for snow, myself and my alternate had to do it a couple of more times because one of the girls next to us, there was a problem in scheduling, so we just got told to do both, which is pretty typical. You will step in for other roles too. I did that a couple of times other years. And then Big Mouse. I did Big Mouse all but like 3 shows. 2 were for the school show, because theoretically we were supposed to have an alternate, but the girl that was my alternate, who was a year ahead of me in company, was like, oh no, you're supposed to be the only one to do it, I'm just there for the school show. I asked her one day to be like, hey, I don't have any other things this performance, can you please take it? And she begrudgingly said yes. That was also like her last year in company, so take that as you will. Off to the eyeliner. Okay, I've got really thick eyeliner on, but that is pretty typical. Like, I also know some people will do 2 or lines when doing eyeliner also during Nutcracker or any sort of performance. But that was my first year doing Nutcracker with company. The next year, trying to get onto happier notes, I ended up doing, initially I was only going to get, instead of doing Chinese, waltz, and that was going to probably be it. However, they needed more people to do Dance of the Reed Flutes, or as we refer to it as Merlaton, for the 8 fouettes. So I ended up doing that. It took a lot of work because I am not a turner, and at that point I really couldn't turn. But I got it. I figured it out, and I did pretty well for most of my shows. I did about 5 shows, and it was pretty good season. I also, that was not the first year I did Fog Machine. Yeah, freshman year. It was just a lot of shows. I also ended up doing a lot of it with possibly pneumonia or the flu or something. It was a bad season overall that year, to the point where one of the girls that was Sugar Plum had overworked her knee so hard that she could barely walk. Another girl had gotten so sick and dehydrated that, because also she was only really drinking like green tea because it was supposed to have better energy and also like to help lose weight, because of course dance, no matter what, will have these like intrusive thoughts. Yeah, she ended up hospitalizing herself, mostly due to the dehydration. She was actually my Secret Santa that year. And then so somebody else had to do waltz. She had not done waltz. This woman had not done waltz in years. And I was the one having to go over things with her a couple of minutes before, because I could figure out people's positioning and stuff very, very quickly. Because the girl's alternate was doing something like lead Chinese that day. That was also the last year that we did school shows. And that was also last year I did Mouse, and I could barely do Mouse. Actually, both myself and my alternate for Mouse could barely do it because both of us were like real sick. The sophomore year was kind of when I started to get bigger roles and do more things. Still doing Merlaton, 8 fouettes, that was fine. No complaints there. I preferred to do it like that. And I was doing background candy cane, which was more or less fine. It was a pain in the butt some days because of the ribbons, they would get caught or other things. And I pumped out way too much foundation. But we'll go down the neck. Also, I'm gonna have fun editing because this thing's got my name on it, and yeah, you can definitely tell that like one eyelid droops more than the other. But with sophomore year, I also got lead waltz and lead stone. Now lead waltz, generally, I went like 2 weeks without ever doing it at rehearsal because everybody else wanted to do it, and I was kind of meeker. Snow leader, I was surprised. I got in one of the like theoretically better spots because it kind of goes in descending order for height, and I was mid-height at that point. I did, however, I only had 3 performances of it. I did, however, my first performance in Snow Leader fall. Yeah. I didn't have to stay for the second act, which was nice. I mean, also, there seemed to have been a slippery spot on the floor that show because another girl fell in a similar spot. But that's because I had to go do some other things that were not so fun, but I had volunteered to do it, so that was also the year I started doing fog machine. So there are 2 instances of fog. I was fog lady left at this. There's 2 instances of using fog in the performance on the left side. Once was during fight scene, and you had to be careful because you didn't want to get it too much in the soldiers. You were like, okay, deep breath, you guys. The other is you fog up the floor right as the beginning of snow scene during the snow leader spread. So I had, for like 3 performances, somebody else do fog for me, but yeah, I became fog lady left, and I became really close with the stage hands, like all the stage crew guys. And then with my mother, because my mother was doing costumes, we all got really close. They were some of the people who supported me the most backstage, and I have great photos with them. And when I come back, they're always like, ah, yeah, one of the original fog lady lefts. That's great. Junior year is when I had my first ever solo. Well, actually, like, first ever solo in Nutcracker. I'd also only had my first ever solo earlier that year of 2014, during the recital when we were doing variations. No, but the woman didn't take photos during that variation. I was very pissed about that. She took photos of everybody else's variation, but she didn't take any of mine. The woman also couldn't really take good photos. For other company performances, because company would do other shows throughout the year. She never came to rehearsal, so she could figure out when would be a good time to take photos. But junior year was the first time I had a lead, and I remember my first show with Spanish. I was nervous the entire day, because I was doing Spanish and snow leader, so 2 of my more stressful roles. And in that case, it was like I was backstage and my mother was in the audience, so I couldn't go to her, and Miss Terry was there just being like, it's okay, you're fine, calm down. I was just jumping a lot, because there's some parts, there was a turn in Spanish that could go so-so for me. But for the most part, I mean, that first time around went pretty well. I got no comments on it from Mr. Sellers, who was the other instructor. The only problem was the Spanish costume that we have is like left-handed for the hooks, so it's like on the opposite side, and so it throws everybody off. And I had to do both Spanish and just normal waltz, like core waltz. And I had asked somebody to be like, hey, can you help hook me up back? And that was rough. Or was it? Maybe I wasn't doing core waltz. Maybe I was doing candy cane. I knew I had something else. Both times I did Spanish that year, because I only did it twice that year. And yeah, that second show caused drama, because like I messed up the turn a bit. I got scolded at, even though it was kind of the thing of like, okay, you always have to remind yourself that when you got comments from Mr. Sellers, you kind of just let them roll off. Like, usually as you got older, you got better about it, but it still stung, because yeah, I don't always recommend doing that. Like, you should listen to comments from your instructors, but it's during performance season. Allow yourself just to be like, nope, just allow it to kind of roll off, because you're going to be your hardest critic, honestly. That was another comment I always had with the girls that were Merleton, specifically lead Merleton, where they had to do 32 fouettes, which anybody in ballet can attest, like, oh my god, that is scary. They know that that point, dance of the reed flutes, you just start tensing up. Well, like, they would have girls who were like 13, 14 years old doing it. And my thing is, I'm not bitter about like, oh, I didn't do it. I've only done 32 fouettes like a couple of times in my life. But my concern was just like, these girls are going to be so hard on themselves. They haven't had the like practice of just being able to like, okay, a bad performance is a bad performance, or like a performance that's not up to the par that you could do in the studio. Sure, whatever. You just keep on going. So there were times like that, like these girls would come off crying. And there's one girl who, she is so sweet. She's actually a professional dancer now. She had I think she had fallen out of her fouettes at some point. Or maybe she just felt like she could have done better because she maybe didn't do the first 16 counts as single, single, double, single, single, double. I don't know, something like that. And she's crying, and my mother's the one there just consoling her because this girl's mother was doing a different thing for the studio, so my mom was there, saw her, and just acted as a mom. Yeah, junior year, I got in a fight with my dad also about that kind of stuff because he went to a football game. Because that was the only recording of that of my performance for that Spanish was that, and they had even we ended up having to get a refund because like halfway through they'd accidentally stopped recording. Got to put a lot of blush. My senior year was the first year I didn't have to do waltz, like core waltz, which also was the first year they decided, you know what, during this one spot we're not gonna have them do the fouette, they're gonna do just like a soutenu de passe or whatever. Something where it's like, you gotta be kidding me. Also, I got demoted kind of to a different spot for snow leader and also in snow scene a little bit and how things were done, which annoyed me a bit, but whatever. I was not the happiest camper, and there was one incident where it's like, I could have done all of the spot, maybe that was junior. That's junior. There was a spot where I was like, oh, I could have done extra things, but they were like, because I couldn't have done one of those days, they were like, yeah, we're gonna have somebody else come in and do it, which I do get is reasonable. Just kind of like, I'm trying to be a team player here. But with my senior year, that was when I did lead Candy Cane. I had so-so performances on that. One of the problems is you have to do like a double chaîné, which is always rough. And my balance is on stage were never as good. Although during stage rehearsal, I got like this beautiful, it probably wasn't that beautiful, but it was, you hold the rope, the ribbon, and your balance, and then you kind of go swoop down and into like a pseudo, like demi-plongé. I held that position for a while, and there were photos taken of it, but I don't know where they are. Like, I didn't take them. It was a woman that is involved in like the social media. She took them, but I never saw them. Never put on highlighter back in the day. That was not a thing. The other performances, the big performance though my senior year was the incident I and the rest of the Waltz of the Flowers got a standing ovation. So this would have been December 17th, actually, if I remember correctly, because the new Star Wars movie had just come out, as in Force Awakens. I couldn't have seen it that weekend. I was really sad, or one of the other weekends, well, and whatnot. But we had the performance. It was also the afternoon. It was the matinee on a Saturday. And it's myself and this other girl who, interestingly, we look really similar. And while she's taller than me, she was on the short side because I wanted to stay on my side. The side I had been doing for, at that point, that would have been my third year. Like, I knew Waltz Leader like the back of my hand. It was my favorite piece because didn't have challenges, but it was like a little bit more than doing waltz, background waltz, or doing other things. But we were there, and we were about 2/3 of the way through, and the music just cuts out. Like, the girl and I that had just been waltz leaders just did our like final entrance, and the music cuts out, and so we just keep on going. We have Miss Terry and Katie backstage counting for us. It was to keep us in time, and myself and the girl that I was like waltz leader with, we were watching each other to make sure we're together. All of the corps is watching us. It was beautiful. It never looked that together ever. And the guy the girl that was doing Dewdrop, she was doing fine. She was beautiful. The guy that was doing Cavalier with her was like literally like humming along for the two of them to make sure that they were in time. And it goes off without a hitch. We get a standing ovation because pretty much once that music cut out, because Miss Terry had been like, don't try to bring it back, just bring it in for the pas de deux. And because I had that concern because I'd seen it one other time where music had cut out and they just did the dance and then they redid it, kind of. Granted, it was party scene, so it was a little bit easier. But oh my gosh, standing ovation. And it was a beautiful way to end off my senior year, because my senior performance, like my final Christmas Eve performance, was not spectacular. It was, I think I was doing candy cane or something, like background candy cane, and normal snow. The reason I was doing that is because we didn't know if my sisters were going to be able to make it for all of Christmas. So in talking with my teacher, we had coordinated so that at least they would be able to see my performances. But yeah, there was a lot of tears generally that season, both the fact that my senior year I got a standing ovation, and also just senior year Nutcracker. Family members were kind of like, oh my god, thank goodness it's done, which I was like, that's like a little tone deaf to say, like, oh my god, thank goodness we never have to deal with it again. Like, that hurts, because I love Nutcracker. One of the years went back to almost like every show and sat backstage and watched, and it was great. Yeah, it was like my sophomore year, I was able to do one performance. This was sophomore year of college. I was able to go back and be one of the moms. Same mom I was actually when I was a senior, because I was able to do a couple of shows as mom, just for the fun of it. Okay, yeah, the bright red lip. No, some days I think I'd like to go back and do Nutcracker again. I've gone back and watched the show. I watched it when I was a freshman in college. Maybe it's a little too fresh for me to watch it at that point. And then I did watch it last Christmas, and that was interesting because they'd had to change up choreography due to the pandemic and just not having the same kind of company as they once did. They still had really good talent, it was just, for example, not as many men. So yeah, but I may go back this year to go see it, see how it changes with Catherine and Chris running it now. Also, I've got my hair up in a bun. I don't have like hairspray or anything or a net. I've got the company sweatshirt on, not the company, but the Christmas sweatshirt. Also underneath, it's a sports bra, because usually what happens is you'd show up with the sports bra, some sort of sweatshirt, hair sometimes done, sometimes not, and either sweats. Ooh, my hip just popped like I was in ballet. I've got on the knits, those like knit overalls that dancers wear, because I still have a pair of those. That you usually have your tights on, and for us, we always had these like briefs that you'd wear with your snow costume and with your waltz costumes. So usually just showed up in those. But yeah, give me a headpiece and I look exactly like I did most of the time. Like one of the snow scene like headpiece snowflakes. Yeah. Oh man, I had many a photo of me with like tutu, like half on, like shirt on, and a headpiece. Yeah. Also got another funny thing with the with Nutcracker, because you had the arm puffs. I periodically got them yanked up my arm. It was like, and up you go. Sometimes we were missing arm pieces. There was like a couple of years, there was a specific generation of girls where we were either missing a lot of head pieces and a lot of arm puffs. But yeah, I was doing I would be doing a waltz, and my teacher would walk up behind me in hysteria and just like pull up the arm puffs. During Spanish, again, pull up the arm puffs. Heck, if I ever had arm puffs at a wedding and I invited Miss Terry, she would come up behind me and be like yanking it up, and I was like, why I would have arm puffs? I don't know. Why she would be there? It would require us to get close again. She was similar to she was like an aunt at points to me. But yeah. Oof. Memories. Thank you guys, though, so much for watching and listening to me ramble about Nutcracker. Please remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Check out my Instagram if you want. It's Obi Like Kenobi. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye.